Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my phone, she got me locked in on cup though.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
A guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least.
Hello everyone, welcome one and all to PSGL, to PCF4 and to Season 34, Round 10 of the season. Apologies for my camera being a little bit low frame rate, and having a little technical issues here and there, but we're of course here in the commentary box as we come to the final 3 races of the season, and I'm once again joined by Myth Sky. How are you doing, my friend? We've got a pretty good track ahead of ourselves today, don't we?
We have a great track ahead of us, and of course round 11 and 12 we are not sure where we will be heading out to yet, but tonight it will be the Mexico City Street Circuit, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, which I'll fill you in all about that track later on. Our title fight's quite heating up. We had a very, let's say, eventful last race in Saudi Arabia, and boy do we have a lot to talk about.
Yep, so as we come through, we are on the 10th race of the 12-round season, and it is the Circuito Hermanos Rodriguez, aka the Mexican Grand Prix. Rounds 11 and 12 yet to be announced, but let's take a look at where we stood last time, because last time was pretty wild, I've got to say. We had 13 stewards reports. Of course, those who watched us last week, you saw it firsthand, and if you didn't catch it, then you might want to go back and watch that one after you've caught this live stream, because you have a lot of incidents to cover. Main things to note is that we had a couple of drivers who are serving a quali ban, namely Rayod Sproges, who has been one of our drivers we've been keeping an eye on as one of the top contenders, caught on being awarded 5 license points and a disqualification from round 9 for a little bit of a collusion incident with another driver, and a few penalties being removed, a few penalties being added. So for instance, you can see here Andre Molnar was a big winner because he got a place promotion from 5th to 4th after getting 3 seconds removed for a double penalty. You had Sven Schumacher, who successfully appealed one of his penalties on lap 22, putting him in 3rd place, so earning a podium post-race, which is pretty rare, but not impossible, as we're seeing an Andrew Karapi getting plus 20 seconds, though interestingly not losing any places, and you can see how many drivers ended up not finishing or not scoring. Only 12 drivers finished out of that whole ordeal. What do you make of that?
Well, it was pretty scrappy last time around. I mean, I already started with qualifying, 2 major incidents there of blocking that led to some severe crashes, out of which Alexander Dimas is also serving a qualifying ban this weekend. So we'll have 2 of our championship contenders missing qualifying and just having to start at the back of the field later on tonight. And yeah, during the race, a couple of safety cars, virtual safety cars. We had the issue with the safety car at the end as well. That meant we couldn't even use the final result, but had to go back a few laps. It was chaos overall, and within all this chaos, because of penalties removed, we as you can see, 4 drivers finished within 0.6 of a second. That's huge.
Yeah, that's insane to look at. So the amount of chaos that we saw. Big thing to note, again, please subscribe to the channel and check out last week's race. You need that key context, but the safety car logic kind of broke, because for those who don't know, in the final 2 laps, the safety car is hard-coded to come out of the race in order to have at least two laps of guaranteed racing. But when you get a safety car on the penultimate lap to that rule, so in our case, lap 26 of 29, I believe, when the safety car came out, it was very confused. The logic was completely broken, and what ended up happening is some drivers got unfairly disqualified. You had 2 drivers at the very top, so I believe it was Nyquist and Lillian who came out ahead of everybody else, completely passing the safety car where everyone else was forced to stay behind. So the decision was made, in fairness, to take the results from pre-safety car in order to sort of circumvent the game, having a little bit of broken logic. That goes to show, say, the game has its limitations, huh?
Yeah, it does. It was pretty crazy to see, and I think it's the only right decision the stewards made to use the results from before the incident that led to the safety car. So we at least have some fair results to go off at. And yeah, I mean, Lillian was already leading. He still got the race win, so for him it doesn't matter all that much. And for Lillian, it means some really good points scored in order for his championship bid. Also, this week, important to note, we will be missing Jeremy, unfortunately, due to an injury. I believe he had an injury in his wrist, as he mentioned. So we hope that he gets well soon, because we won't be seeing him for this week. And I'm not sure if he'll be able to turn up for the next couple of weeks either.
Yeah, so we'll take it quickly through, and on that note, we just wanted to sort of put out a message to a friend in the sim racing community, Christian Colagrosso, unfortunately lost his life in an accident very recently. He's in the ACC community, but he's a friend nonetheless, so we wanted to share our condolences from all the team at PSGL at this tough time. Ballas Esports, friends and family, and sim racers around the world, we wanted to share our condolences and know that the hearts over PSGL are with you in this trying time. But we look forward, and we can see in the season that Lililin's the one to keep an eye on, and 2 points ahead of Milan Maja. Sprogis along with Alexander Dimas are both serving quali bans. You can hear the ticker in the background, so I'm keeping it quick. The constructors standings currently stand with McLaren up ahead, 19 points clear of Aston Martin, with AlphaTauri coming up behind. The constructors are a little bit of an interesting one because they reserve drivers have been making a bit of a comeback, but let's talk about the track before we load into quali here.
Let's definitely talk about this track. So the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, named after the brothers Rodriguez, of who mainly Ricardo Rodriguez, the track was named after. He was in a practice run in 1962 on this track, fortunately passed away there, and shortly after that it was decided that they would name the track after him. His brother also drove F1. For Ricardo, it was only about 5 races that he was able to do, but for his brother Pedro, he managed to win 2 races altogether, making him, until Sergio Perez, of course, the most successful Mexican driver out there. Perez, now the most successful, with 6 wins to his name. The track, 4.304 kilometers or 2.674 miles, 17 corners and 3 DRS zones, but interestingly, only 2 DRS detection zones. First detection zone being between turn 9 and 10, with the zone going from turn 11 to turn 12, which is shortly after the S's. Then we have another detection point at turn 15, which is just before we head into the final corner, the Peraltada, and then you have a DRS zone on the main straight, and in between turns 3 and 4. So most of sector 1 is with DRS. Lap record held by Valtteri Bottas, set in 2021 at 1:17.774, although I'm sure our drivers will be quite a bit quicker tonight. And the most wins at this track are 4 wins, and that is for Max Verstappen, both back-to-back victories there. Another key thing to note here, won't bother you too much with the corner names, you will hear those in the race, but the race winner yesterday in the PSGL F1 PC, picking up his first win of the season, Jarno Opmeer, also leading the championship for the time being, and he now has a 11-point lead there, so still under pressure by a couple of drivers, but starting to get comfortable there. Definitely not the case for us, because we have 6 drivers within 7 points.
Yeah, and that 6 drivers within 7 points is going to be the key point of contention here, as everyone in that sort of small pack has an opportunity to rise up, an opportunity to really go for some sense. Key things here, as you can see, Dimas has retired from the session to serve his quali ban, along with Kokeni Tamas. Remember, they had, not the last round, but the round before, they had apparently a quali ban. So, of course, following their next event, they are serving it. And, of course, Reinhard Sprogis is either going to be staying in the pits or retiring in line with procedure. Key areas of this track, without a doubt, I think the most important thing with setting a good lap here is you have to nail your Sector 2. Your Sector 2 is absolutely everything. Hanging in the high-speed corners, fully committing through some of the chicanes, and getting a good setup through the sort of sharp left then right, almost triangle-looking corners coming out of Sector 1.
Yeah, and it's also the area where it's very easy to pick up some not penalties, but of course to pick up an invalidation by crossing the track limit, especially going through the SS turn 7 through turn 11, which that is. And then we have the beautiful stadium section that will go in for Sector 3, which is the Foro Sol, and that heading into the Peraltada, where we've seen some big accidents before. We see, I think, one of the Williams coming around now as they cross the start-finish line. Up ahead, I believe it's the McLarens leading the pack of the Leolund and Leolund and Miller Meyer are still on that outlap, so the Mercedes of Vincent
Sven
Knight
Schumacher.
is in the lead, so he is the first one to set lap time.
So key driving areas, as you can see, we are on board with Sven Schumacher right now, and we are going to see, I believe they are, in fact, the first driver who is going to be setting a proper lap on the books. The DRS coming in here. We're expecting speeds anywhere of 190 to 195 miles an hour before you come into and through the stadium section. Oh, Vincent Nyquist actually was one who got much further ahead. Sven Schumacher dipped off a bit, so a 15.360 is the time to beat. Noel Carman with a 15.5, so making it so far. The first 2 laps are going to be coming from Mercedes, and Sven Schumacher is going to splice the 2 with a 15.409. Anyone coming in to challenge that? We've got Siston Linhart coming through. It is going to be challenging that with a 15.315. That's putting him in top.
Yeah, Sixten Linhart, we know him as a reserve driver, this time filling in for Ben Marples. And to be honest, if we see him perform in the races, we see him perform in qualifying as well, this man deserves a racing seat for next season. So for all the teams looking, all the teams watching, make sure this man's got a seat next time round.
I guess that's a key thing with the reserve role. It's that you have an opportunity to prove yourself in a low commitment scenario, because reserves don't always get the opportunity to race. It's actually, with a good commitment, it's actually very rare that you see reserves on the track. That is their role. They're designed to be the football for when your standard drivers cannot make it. But if you can prove yourself, then anyone is going to be looking for an opportunity to get you signed on, get you on their books, whether that is on the next season, on the following season, so within PSGL or even other tiers, or with some of the external teams, as Lillian is going to be coming to 15.222. That is certainly a statement of intent and a statement that they want to be keeping that championship spot. Santa Maria is going to be a driver with an invalidation.
Yeah, I think, and we just saw Cordon Angola also pick one up heading into the Foro del Sol. So I believe Leo Lund has also picked one up because he is in the pits, whereas Sprogus has not left it yet. Arthur Gune has gone back into the pits, so he must have picked one up as well. So far, all of our drivers within the 115s, but I think we'll be breaking the 114 mark later on the qualifying sessions. We still have 12 minutes remaining. Of course, we have another substitute driver out there tonight. I believe Kokini Thomas is one of our substitute drivers because I don't think he drove for Alpine last week. And, well, Vincent Nyquist last week was in the Alpine. And we have, I believe there was one more. Arda Gune, I don't think was driving for AlphaTauri last time. I think he was driving the Ferrari last weekend. So quite a few reserve drivers out there. Most of them actually performing quite well. And yes, Sixten Linhart with that one podium position in Imola, really showing that even though you are a reserve driver, doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah, the reserve drivers are almost like the wild cards, the black sheep of the group, purely because they can come in with any team, not affiliated to a constructor, just personally themselves as a driver, and they can clean house if they have the wherewithal, the skill, and the talent to do it. They can come in a complete unknown, a complete wildcard, as we said, for the drivers that have been mainstays for multiple races, multiple seasons even. You have a reserve who comes in and wipes the floor, you are going to be getting a lot of attention. We're on board with Simone Violo here, 293 to their name. I think you're right, we're going to maybe see people touch on the 114s, but at least in these early stages, it's looking like 222 is the current ceiling, and we're seeing people focus more on a 0.0 or a 0.1, I believe. I think that's the main area where drivers are aiming. But that being said, a good chunk of the field has yet to set a time.
Yeah, and this comes back to how important the banker laps are. Most of our drivers will be doing 3 runs nonetheless, but you want to make sure that you have that banker lap in straight away, so you have a little bit more confidence. You can take some more risks as well, and if you get an invalidation later on, well, of course that sucks, but at least you got a proper lap on the board. So we now see Leo Lund starting his fastest lap, the first one of the drivers to go out on their second run. Leo Lund shown in the past few weeks that in qualifying, he is one of the strong forces to watch out for. He's been placing consistently high, and also in the races doing much, much better, putting him in spot 7 in the championship so far. He's 19 points away from our championship leader, Lillian. So if he is able to keep those results running all well, he might be able to mix himself still up in that championship fight. Although a bad qualification here, or results later on tonight, will also mean that he will be out of that championship bid. He's now heading into the S's, so turn 7 through 11. One of the more beautiful areas here, almost flat out. And in Leo's case, it is pretty much all the way flat out as he heads into the stadium section.
Yes,
I'm curious to see what lap he can do.
Yeah, through the stadium section now, you can see fully committed. You've got to be careful of the track limits at this section, though, because it's very easy to just arc a little bit wide on the last 2 corners and get yourself an invalidation. Right when you're on the cusp of greatness, you can see it's a 0.335 for Leo Lund. That is going to put him in P4 position. Is anyone going to come in and match that? I say Vincent Nyquist is going to be coming with a 2.25, and that is just 3 milliseconds behind. Can anyone challenge that? Ardagune is going to be coming around the final corner now. Can they get anything better? Can they make a bit of a statement? It's only going to be P12, unfortunately, so they are definitely going to be going around again. And you've got a few more cars who are on their outlaps, but Sixten Linhart is going to be getting one locked in, it looks like. As we come around the final corner, is it going to be an improvement? It is going to be an improvement, and boy is it. A 2.03 is going to put them on pole.
That was a really, really good final sector. Remember, until Sector 2 was almost down a tenth, but he managed to improve almost 3 tenths in the final sector, now putting him up front. And in the meantime, we saw Ivan Santa Maria, one of our championship contenders, invalidating for the 2nd time. So he is yet to set a lap, and that might not be great for him. We see Riyad Sprogus still being in the pit, but I'm not sure. I think he has a quali ban yeah, he has a quali ban too. So in the meantime, Silly Sly Guy set the fastest lap time with a 1:15.155. Would have been better if it was a 1:15.115. You have it the same way twice, but perhaps some of our drivers will still be able to go for it. I think most of our drivers have now gone for their 2nd run, although Cordon N'Golo and Lillian are still on their outlaps.
Yeah, I think Lillian is going to be one we keep an eye on, at least for the time being. If there's anything that we've known about this AlphaTauri driver, is that they absolutely bring the fire when it comes to qualifying. They may not have held it together in the race all the time, but without a doubt, when it comes to the quali, when it comes to putting down that raw 1-lap pace, Lillian has never disappointed. So we're going to stick on board with them now. We're going to see what they can do. So they're belting it down the start-finish straight. One of the longest straights on the calendar, nearly 205 miles an hour in these absolute weapons of driving machines. All very loose on the rear, though, coming from that AlphaTauri and coming to the end of the 2nd sector, or start of the 2nd sector. It is a little bit down owing to that oversteer. I wonder if they can recover.
Yeah, already down 2 tenths on this lap there. I'm not sure if he's going to fully commit through or if he's going to abort this lap so he can go for another one later on. We still have 6.5 minutes remaining, so he definitely will have enough time. So I think he'll be pushing for it. Seems to be slightly off the curves here in the S's. And as he's now going to be rounding up Sector 2, we will see what his lap time is so far. He does improve a little bit. So it shows there's more time in it, and it shows that he can definitely make a bid for that pole position. Sliding through the stadium section a little bit here as well. I think he is just going to complete his lap. No, he's deciding better of it. Knows he's not going to make it, so he will go for a run later on as well. As in the meantime, I believe Sven Schumacher and Milan Meyer have set some faster lap times, coming in P5 and 6. Cordon N'Golo, I think, has invalidated again because he is now speeding down the 1st sector again, but he's used all of his deployment there. Ardagune is out, and even Santa Maria has just started his lap time too.
And it looks like we've got Simon Violo, who is pushing a little bit, looking to get a good lap, but it's a 2nd plus down, so I think this is going to be an abandon from them. They're going to jump into the pit lane. So we'll keep an eye on even Santa Maria. Their teammates in order to see whether they can finally post a time on the board. Remember, only 2 drivers have yet to set a time because Dimas Sprugis and Kokeni Tamas all have quali bans that they are serving this event.
We now see Ivan Santamaria come through the S's. Remember, this is one of our championship contenders. Always, to be fair, out of the 6 championship contenders, perhaps one of the more invisible drivers out there. We don't really see him fight too much for the top steps as he just overshoots there heading into the Forosol. But he has been placing well consistently, and that is why he is still within that championship run, is very, very close to our leader, Lillian. Let's see, he now does have a lap on the board, so that is important. It's only a 1:15.4, 10th place so far, but he should have enough time to go for one final run, and that might be enough to beat that lap time at least a little bit.
Yes, and Ardagune is the second AlphaTauri driver who we're going to be jumping on with. We're going to see if they can get a little bit more time gained. 15.776, which is going to put them 13 out of 17, or at minimum 14th if Cordon and Golo sets a time in these next 4 minutes. And they look to be doing pretty well. They're up on their previous by a 10th. They could scrape at least a 0.5 out of this one, but they seem to be a little bit gentle, not taking as much of the racing line, as much of the curb as many other drivers would. But you can see coming across the line here, it's a big improvement in the 3rd sector. That is going to put them up to 10th. It's only that, but still, 0.377 puts them identical with Noel Carmen and within striking distance of really the rest of the field, bar Sly Guy and Linhart and Lillian and Nyquist. And even then, you can see that everyone is chasing those crucial tenths and milliseconds.
And it does show how much you can improve in that final sector if you take the stadium section properly. As I am now on board with Balan Alekis starting his lap time, currently 2 thousandths quicker in the 1st sector. But he does have about 4 tenths to make up if you want to make a bit for pole. But we see how a lot of drivers have been able to get about 3 tenths in the final sector, so it definitely is not impossible. Did go a little bit wide into Horkia, which is turn number 6. So I'm not sure if he'll be able to make up too much time as he's going to round off Sector 2. Most of our drivers are now coming out for their final laps as he rounds off his 2nd sector. He is still a little bit quicker. Might improve a couple of places if he managed to nail that last sector, but I don't think he'll be competing for pole. And I don't think he has time either to go for yet another lap.
Yeah, I think he's kind of messed up the cadence, the order here. As Balandlekis is going to come across, he is going to get a 15.545, so he is actually slower, and I don't think he has enough time to get round again. It's not going to be enough.
Well, that's the thing that I was looking at too, but now his fuel light has only started to blink. So the big question that I have is if he has enough fuel left to go for yet another run. In the meantime, Silly Sly Guy's left the session. He was leading so far. I'm not sure if that's an issue on his end or if he decided to leave normally. Brett's Progress now left the session, but yeah, he is serving that quali ban, so he definitely won't be able to go for another lap. And I see Arda Gune in the pits, so he will likely not be going for another lap unless he goes out further. He's now already coming out, so he still has time to go for a lap. So all of our drivers, except for Silly Sly Guy, I think, are going to go for one final run.
So everyone's going for their final shots now. So we're on board with Andre Molnar as the leader of this final pack to go through here. Alpine's got a lot of work to do. 0.534 they currently sit at. So just scraping by last position, technically, short of Cordon and the 3 Qualiban drivers. They're going to have to make up at least 2 tenths if they want to be in a competitive position for this race. So coming down the 1st sector now, it looks pretty good and clean in terms of lines, and it is going to be a mild loss of time as Balan Lekes is going to be retiring out. And that is going to be a confirmation of a race restart, folks. A lobby restart because Noel Carmen's got an illegal blocking penalty. And here at PSGL, we just restart the lobby because the game is a little bit, we'll call it inconsistent with the application of said penalties sometimes.
What to me was striking so far is that Andrew Molnar set a 1st sector of a 28.8, which was about 4 tenths slower than we've seen most of the drivers do. But yet again, he seems to be much quicker throughout the rest of the track, so perhaps his setup is slightly different so he can go through the sectors a little bit quicker. He has done almost 2/10 faster in Sector 2, and as he comes across the line, he does put his car only in P11 with a 1:15.394, as we now should have Lillian come through, and he goes fastest, a 1:15.0.
1:15.03 line as the checker flag falls. Simone Violo goes into 6th place. It is going to be an improvement for him, but is it going to be enough to lock in a decent position as the rest of the drivers, and oh, that's critical damage for Leo London, their final attempt. They're going to be right in the middle of the track there. Drivers are going to have their wits about them to get around this kind of scenario. Vincent Nyquist coming through P2. That is going to be a strong spot for them. Sisten Linhart 0.117. Sven Schumacher 166, but doesn't make a standing improvement. Noel Carman is going to be next. He's going to have an invalidation. Milan Meyer as well is going to be pushing around, but they might not have the opportunity to get a good time, or do they? It's a 0.180.
A lot of the drivers are coming close as Arda Gune, I think, is the last one to try and improve, as we see Corin Golo go for P6, but Arda Gune has invalidated at the last bit, although I believe even Santa Maria was behind it, but also was a little off the time. With Andrew Molnar not being on a fast lap, that means that we have our qualification, folks. It is pole position for championship leader Lillian. Our reserve drivers are in P2 and 3, Sixten Linhart, Vincent Nyquist, Silly Sly Guy with a really good qualifying coming in P4, and Sven Schumacher, one of the other championship contenders, one of other 6 in P5 with 1:15.166.
You can see the rest of the timing sheet falling here. So Cordon N'Golo is going to be in 6th place with a 0.168. They really did pull it out the bag right at the end. I do have to say, they really did. Kind of surprised me personally, because I was worried they weren't going to set a time. And if they were going to get a time, it wasn't going to be looking good. So P6, very strong position, especially considering how condensed this upper to mid pack is. But everyone is going to be jumping out. You've got your quali order, which we will be confirming very shortly. And we will be taking a small gap in order to get the lobby fully reinstated. We can see everyone leaving now. Milan Meyer P7, Simone Viola P8. P9 goes to Leo Lund despite the crash out in their top run. What looks to be a really, absolutely stonking run there. And then we're on board with Sisten Linhart, who's 2nd place. Lillian went into the pit lane and retired in order to get that lobby up as soon as possible.
In the meantime, that gives us some chance to cover the 6 drivers that are still within that championship bit, so I can fill you in on the point gaps that there are, and of course their qualifying results. Lillian's currently leading the championship, 58 points, and did place in 1st, so he'll be starting from pole position. 2nd place in championship, Milan Meyer, 56 points, 2 points behind. I believe they pick up a P6 or P7 this qualifying just now. Then it's Rias Sprogus, 1 point behind them. Pip had a qualifying ban, so he'll be participating in the race, but starting from the back. Ivan Santa Maria, rather disappointing qualifying for him, starting in P13, 54 points in championship, 4 behind our leader. Then it's Sven Schumacher, picking up P5 in quali, so out of the championship runners in 2nd, you could say. 6 points behind our championship leader, Lillian, with 52 points. And then on 51 points, it's Alexander Dimas. But they've been having a rather stroke of unfortunate runs with in Imola, position 11, in Belgium, round 8, spot 14, and now the last race, Saudi Arabia, 10th with fastest lap. So in the last 3 races, only picking up 2 points and still being in a championship contention. And also he had a qualifying ban, so we'll be starting from the back of the field.
And there we go, folks. So that is your quali rundown, and we'll be right back after the lobby is restarted and we get a word from one of our key sponsors, GT Omega. All right, folks, thank you for your patience. We are officially back, and we are, just as a bit of context, we are going to be taking a small intermission. We're going to use this time to kind of remind you, get you caught up to speed with the drivers to watch, the drivers that you will want to be keeping an eye on this race in terms of the championship fight, in terms of who has certainly been surprising us this season, and who is going to be potentially the driver that comes out on top, depending on how this setup goes. So first things first, where we stood last race. Just as a reminder, Lilium won out, so they have got a healthy 16 points, which put them back in the lead of the championship just by 2 points against even Santa Maria. But you can see that the penalties got applied and really shake things up. Namely Sven Schumacher, who got an inherited podium after Milan Meyer was dropped down in favour of Andre Molnar, and Sven getting those penalties and misjudgments on penalties peeled and removed. You got 20 seconds for Andrew Karapi, and quite a few license points. A few drivers who are getting close to race ban. So this is your reminder. Keep it clean, folks. This is your reminder. We don't want any chaos. We don't want any drama, as it were. And we should hopefully see, at least if quality is anything to go by, we should see things a little bit smoother this time round.
Yeah, this time around qualifying looked pretty clean, and indeed there's a few drivers to watch that really have to watch their toes in the coming races, because both Alexander Dimas and Ruud Sproges only 1 or 2 incidents away from a race ban. They just had their qualifying ban out there, and with it being in the championship fight, if you pick up a race ban now, then that certainly will be the end for your championship bid. So that's something you definitely don't want to happen. What is also interesting to note is that our championship leader Lilian missed race 5 and 6 of the season because he was on a holiday, but is since still leading the championship. The worst placing, 2 7th places, 2 6th places, 4th place, and 2 race wins, with of course that win last week around in Saudi Arabia, and now also in the hot seat for a win at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, picking up that pole position. Other drivers that were already mentioned, Sixten Linhard is in 11th in the championship despite being a reserve driver, has already picked up 20 points in total. He'll be starting from P2. And Vincent Nyquist, who finished 2nd last race, also has 12 points to his name, another reserve driver, starting in P3. So those drivers definitely making a good bid for hopefully a full-time race seat next season.
Yeah.
What other drivers are you looking out for?
I've got to say, one, I'm looking at the reserve drivers, because Linhart in particular has proven themselves to be a strong entity on and off the field. So in the 3 races they finished, 2 of them have been in really good points paying positions. You had round 7 and round 8, giving them a 2nd and 4th respectively. Had a little bit of a wobble in Japan, but I think that was just first outing nerves. But that can also be applied and scrutinized with the story of Vincent Nyquist. They've had 1 finish, technically. They DNF'd in our inaugural round in Interlagos, but on round 9 in Saudi Arabia, they came 2nd. And 1 finish, and that finish being a 2nd, is certainly a statement which they will want to keep taking forward with them and keep themselves going in terms of motivation through the rest of this season. If they get more drives on the field, which I'm sure they're going to, they seem to be, along with Linhart, the favourite reserves that are coming out, always ready to go, which we really love to see. Like you say, I really hope that they do get the full-time spots next season. If not, prove that they have the pace to fight up there with the rest of them.
Yeah, we saw this weekend that the drivers are also making their bid for some good starting positions. We, of course, saw Vincent Nyquist last week. I believe he started in P2 as well. We had an Alpine front row, now starting in P3, so really does have that qualifying pace there. Yeah, other drivers to watch out for. Leo Lund has been fairly strong in a couple of races too, picking up that race win round 8 Belgium 2 weeks ago with that last corner double overtake, going from 3rd to 1st. But yeah, so far he's 19 points away from the championship lead, so unless something great happens for him, I don't think he'll be fighting for the championship this season. But with 6 drivers still in contention for that, and we've been saying so far, okay, at some point we have to lose some drivers that are not going to be in championship contention anymore, but we keep getting more and more drivers out there. But I think with 6, now round 10, I think we'll finally start to see that crack a little bit, and going into round 11, likely some less championship contenders.
Yeah, so the key people to keep an eye on: Lillian, of course, getting pole position in quali. You've got Ivan Santamaria, who is another championship contender, but is fairly low down the field at this session. Rad Sprogis, another one to watch with 3 wins to their name, but did serve a quali ban, so they are naturally at the back of the grid, and they're going to have to fight their way back up. And the rest of the field kind of speaks for itself. Sven Schumacher's been on a good turn. Leo Lund, I'd say, is a bit more of a glass cannon, because as we saw with qualifying, just having one bad corner and they fully terminally damaged their car, they could have brought it home with a substantial time gain, but we're seeing not necessarily the consistency I'd expect from this driver in seasons past, but certainly they have the pace on tap. They just need to fully harness it. Either way, we are about to get into the race, folks. It is looking substantially overcast, actually, so I will be keeping a keen eye on these drivers, just getting all our telemetry windows up as we are about to get onto the grid. Who's your one driver you would keep an eye on, Myth?
Well, so far the driver I've been mostly keeping an eye on is Alexander Dimas. We're getting ready for the race. I'll throw it back to you.
And here we go. So it's 5 red lights. The track is officially hot, and we're going to be on board with Sistan Lindhardt, as we're going to have a fairly slow getaway from quite a few drivers. It seems like we see Silly Sly Guy dropping down a couple of positions. We've got Sistan Lindhardt, who's back hot to the seat of Vincent Nyquist, who is going to be making a move on the inside. It's 2, nearly 3 abreast. It is 3 abreast. You're a little bit further back. There is a squeeze. Leo Lund is back down to the bottom. Sly Guy down in P17. They've had a bit of an incident, and they are marooned out on track. They're going to have to get themselves back in. We can see Ardagune as well dropping down massively. There is a huge pack down at the bottom of this field, and you can look and just watch the chaos unfolding at this bottom to mid pack. Sven Schumacher and Cordingolo. You've got 3 wide with the Alpine, Andrew Molnar, Ballet and Lekis. You've got AlphaTauri, Gune, Tamas, Silly Sly Guys on the recovery. It's all kicking off all around the field right now.
There's a lot going on, and very unfortunate for Silly Sly Guy dropping back so many positions, starting all the way up in P4, and now it's dropped 13 places all the way down to P17. One of our biggest profiters out of that is Milan Meyer, picked up 3 places, one of our championship contenders. Sven Schumacher's dropped 1 position, going down to 6th. Even Santa Maria picking up 4 places, already up in 9th. And with Alexander Dimas and Riyad Sprogis, our other contenders in P13, 13 and 14, definitely some drivers to watch, and I think we might have a fight going on between it.
I say Milan Meyer is one that I'm personally keeping an eye on, because you look at this car right now, they're on softs, so they need to get around all the other competitors as fast as possible. Those softs are not going to last long, and the advantage is not going to be held for more than, I'd say, 5 to 6 laps before these already very quick tyres, and very quick in terms of health, start to degrade. So in Milan Meyer's case and in Alekis' case, as they started from, I believe, P14, they have got the very tough job of siving through the field really as quick as possible.
I think most of the drivers have really shown what they think is the best tactic. We saw yesterday as well that you are going to favor a one-stop with medium and hard tires is what you will be running. We saw quite some drivers in the F1 start on medium and then go to hards. Others went from hard to mediums. Now pretty much all of our drivers are on hard, so they definitely have been watching the stream. We saw in turn 1 Riyad Sprogis go for a double overtake on Dimas and Mona, which was a wonderful overtake, which puts him now in P12, really making quite his way up front. But yeah, Milan Meyer definitely has to go all the way to the front of the field if he wants to make any hopes winning this race.
Well, he certainly got the statement of intent, because he just set the fastest lap coming into lap 3, and with the DRS being officially enabled now, we are starting to see that people are shaping up for those moves. People are shaping up for those DRS trains to really kick in properly. We've got maybe a move coming down the bottom. I see Ballant and Lekis going very narrow on Noel Coleman there, but it doesn't make the move stick. And crucially, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that McLaren. You can see them looking to the left, looking to the right, potential moves. They're just trying to see where they can place their car, potentially even psych out their opponents, as we are now in that sort of crucial battle phase.
Yeah, remember DRS detection zone between turn 9 and 10, as we're now heading into turn 7. So when we come round down this left-hander, we'll have our DRS detection zone there. And then after the 2 more corners, which is right over here, we will head into our DRS zone. So Milan Meyer can try and close that gap. 6 and Linhart is wisely choosing not to go for an overtake. Yeah, they're playing the long game. There will likely not be too much overtaking up at the front. But of course, Milan Meyer will have to do that, because if they stay behind, they are going to struggle later on in the race. So they want to be ahead, and they want to pull a gap that is at least substantially larger than the DRS window of 1 second. And he is indeed going for a move on to 6 and Linhart, using a little bit of his overtake there. 6 and Linhart not defending there, knowing that this is not quite the take, and he goes for a double overtake all the way to the lead, passing Lillian as well. But this is what Milan Meyer needs to do, and now he needs to make sure that he can pull a gap. They can stay out of the DRS zone. He still has that second run of DRS, because there's only 1 detection point for start-finish line and then 2 DRS zones. So can make a little bit of use of that. But now in the middle sector, we'll have to drive away second. Otherwise, those soft tires are not going to pay dividends to him.
Yeah, and that big push coming into the second sector is really what matters for Milan Meyer, because now they can lean into the soft compound. They're not being affected by dirty air. They're not being affected by any cars that are ahead of them that can compromise their spacing and their line. So they need to ensure that they keep their cool head at this point. They just need to focus in, lock in the move that they do have. But yeah, we see it particularly with Saudi Arabia, as we did last round, but strategizing around the DRS is so important. Like Milan Meyer here, he needed to get that about 5 to 6 tenths gap, because he knows Lillian and Linhart are going to be chasing him down hard with 2 DRS zones to their name, and he's also got about a quarter of the battery tank left. So even with the new fastest lap, as we hop on board with Lillian, they've got 3/4 of a battery, and they've got DRS happily at their disposal, so they can either choose to conserve resources or they can go for a bit more of a risky move.
Yeah, and I think the hard runners will decide well that it's much easier for them to just save their tires a little bit, stay within that DRS range, and just drive a little bit more efficient, perhaps seeing out an extra lap that will help them out at the end of the race. So they don't want to be ahead, and they're indeed, as you can see, Lillian lifting, coasting a little bit, going into turn 4, that is, into the Esi del Lago. He does not want to overtake Milan Meyer. But yeah, Milan definitely not being able to get away so far, just get a much better exit there out of Orkia. But for him, it's going to be very, very hard to get out of the DRS zone. He has picked up 6 positions, but the question is at what position he will be finishing, because so far tactics perhaps not playing in his hand.
Another one who has made a bit of upwards movement and needs to lean into strategy is Raad Sprogis. They're already doing a good job because they've managed to make themselves up into P12, and they're chasing down P11 because they're very close to the rear of Kalman. Almost coming into a little bit of a wobble, a little bit of a spin potentially as they come to the stadium section, but coming out of it, you can see how close and how much they are sort of trying to just push and get the most out of their car in these early stages, because they do not have strategy on their side, they do not have track positioning on their side, and Milan Meyer is going to be demoted to second place. Sixten Linhart eyeing up a position, but he chooses not to take it. I think he's waiting for the second DRS zone, and we're about to see if that is proven right as we come out to the end of the sector, and there you go, that is the Red Bull, the RB19, going around the outside, ready for second sector. Milan Meyer's being demoted to P3, and they are going to be struggling for options as the softs are going to start to give way, and their battery is not there to save them.
Now, we saw that in the stadium section, the hairpin, he slightly overbrake, lost about 3/10 of a lead that he had to Lillian, about half of the gap that he had. And yeah, after that, he was pretty much a sitting duck on the long straight with 2 people overtaking him, so Lillian and Sixten Linhart. So he can start all over again. But the big question is, has he overdone his tires already, or can he continue for a little bit longer? And in the meantime, Vincent Nyquist is already eyeing up the position. He's getting a lot closer. Balin Delekis, in the meantime, the other driver on the softs, has picked up 5 positions so far, starting to get a little bit stuck as well. Some gaps are starting to form. The top 8 all within the DRS train. Then Balin Delekis leading the second DRS train up until Ender Molnar, so P9 to P14. And then Arthur Gune and Kukeni Thomas also fighting for P15, as we now see Milan Meyer and Vincent Nyquist go side by side into T1. And it is Vincent Nyquist getting the better of that.
We also see a little bit of tussling behind as you've got quite a few drivers who are fighting for that sort of mid-pack position. Sven Schumacher being the key one to keep an eye on as Simone Violo and Leo Lund are trading positions. Simone, though, is running out of battery. He's on that recharge. You can see the flashing lights, but he's still committed. He is remaining a fighter on this front, even with a little bit of a rearward kick, and that Aston Martin is going to be forced to go into P8, but he still kept that fight going. He still remained committed, and I think that's what we want to see, that hard but fair racing. Interestingly, Silly Sly Guy, he went into the pits, assumedly for damage, but he's come out on the medium, which I find very curious.
Yeah, I think he's going to go for a completely different strategy, perhaps hoping for a safety car later on, so he wants to make a bid for some points later on. In the meantime, what is also important for Simone Violo to do is to go for some attacking moves, because if he is going to cause the drivers up ahead to stall, it means that Ivan Santa Maria, his teammate, can close in, get within DRS range, and go back into the fight up front, because remember, he is one of our championship contenders. Also means that he's going to put Gerard Sprogus and Alexander Dimas a little bit back in the fight as well, as we see Andre Molnar go for a pits as well, but I think he had a little bit of a tussle with one of the drivers, so he might have not gone into that pits voluntarily, although the pit stop does not take too long. He comes out already, and he has decided to go for the medium tires as well. So some of the tires already seemingly done for. I think Milan Meyer and Van der Leckes will come in a couple of laps and also switch to the hard tires later on.
We'll see a little bit of hard fighting now as Sven Schumacher doesn't really leave the space for Leo Lund coming into the second sector. He has to go a little bit out wide and seems to be a little bit skittish. We also saw a little bit of an incident between, I believe it was Andre Molnar and Alexander Dimas, both of them going off track. A Silly Sly Guy is going to be our first driver to be hit with a 3-second time penalty, 4 track limits warnings, so it goes to show they are trying to make up the time, but being a little bit too aggressive about it, in my opinion. They kind of need to dial things back. I think understanding that this maybe is not your race and just sort of bringing it home at this stage might be the ideal. You never know. We could have a Saudi Arabia where a lot of drivers DNF or DSQ in some cases. Although you don't want that to happen.
Definitely not, and that is something that the driver should keep in mind and not give up way too soon. Because in the meantime, we see Milan Meyer starting to struggle a little bit, keeping up with the hard runners in front of him, as they are within 2 tenths, and P1, 2, and 3 is 6, and Linhart has actually taken over the lead from Lillian and is now running in P1. Gerard Sprogus has now also dispatched Balan de Leckes, also another soft runner losing position, so it shows that the softs are pretty much done for already, as Andre Molnar comes in yet again for a pit stop. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Let's see what he does now. He does come with a front wing change, so I think perhaps that he wanted to make a switch last time around, but for some reason the front wing didn't change and had to go for another one. But because he's now switched from hard to medium to hards, could technically go to the end, but with 27 laps remaining, I don't think that is a viable option. Another driver that is perhaps waiting for a safety car later on.
Far from ideal. That would put your hards, even though they are considered hard wearing, that would still put your hard tires on the brink of delamination and puncture, so that is extremely risky. That would not be the way to go for. I think, yeah, as you say, what's happened here is simply that he wanted a front wing change. He did have that contact with Alexander Dimas. That did put some front wing damage on the car, evidently, so they just needed to get that done. For whatever reason, didn't get done on the lap prior, or maybe on their opening lap was the one where they put on the fresh mediums and they had to come in again. Couldn't really say, but Lillian is one that is currently chasing down Sixten Linhart, and they did have a bit of a wobble, as Vincent Nyquist just did right there, and we're going to see if they go for the move, if they fully commit coming into the second sector, but no, they choose to hold off in order to conserve resources for a later move. I think that's the play.
Yeah, and Silly Sly Guy has now DNF, as we saw in the main straight where it's progress taking off another championship protagonist, Ivan Santa Maria. It seemed like Ivan Santa Maria couldn't really keep up with the pace from Simone Violo, was dropping back a little bit, was about 2.5 seconds behind, as now Gerard Sprogus will have to close that gap in order to catch up with the top 8. And yeah, the yellow flags that we see now, sector 1 only, sector 3 prior as well, is because of that retiring from Silly Sly Guy. Alexander Dimas still behind Ivan Santa Maria, was just outside the DRS zone last lap. We'll get within DRS, and Yeah, Egon Maria, I think, still has his DRS as well. But we see Riot's progress is starting to close the gap a little bit, starting to get a little bit shorter. But he will have his work cut out if he wants to close that 2-second gap to Simone Field.
Yeah, now we're seeing a tale of two trains when it comes to this race. We've got Rad Sprogus in P9, but he is going to have a lot of work cut out for him. And he's burnt pretty much all of his resources at his disposal. We saw the move for P10. He got the move, yes, but he burnt all of his battery at the start of the lap to get it done down the start-finish straight. So how much they're doing in terms of battery recovering and resource management and economy in general, it looks to be completely up in the air. I think, say, Sprogus, they do have the pace on tap, but the economy side of things, the ERS management, making sure you have the DRS, I think that's just completely gone out the window in favor of those short-term positional gains, which I would worry about, or at least think about dialing back from this perspective.
In the meantime, we saw even Sanari also overtaken by Alexander Dimas. Almost had some contact going into turn 2, but even Sanari decided better of it and not go into any fights with Dimas, who seems to have much greater pace than he does himself. Riot Sprogus, in the meantime, starting to stay behind a little bit, behind Simone Viola. But yeah, crucially, he does not have DRS, where the DRS train up ahead, all the way the top 8 has DRS. That is going to cost him a lot of time. It's going to make it very, very difficult to close that gap. So I think what Sprogus and Dimas will have to do is they will have to go for the undercut, try and get within the DRS train after our first set of pit stops, and then hope they can make their way up, score some nice points, because Lillian, currently in P2, might take a significant chunk out of that, a big bite with a lot of points, meaning that they solidify their championship lead.
As Lillian is playing a little bit of leapfrog with Linhart right now. I think they're going into that first position knowing full well they'll lose it on the following lap. But that's kind of the strategic play. When you get to Mexico, you have no choice but to play a little bit of DRS leapfrog, because there's just such a massive amount of the track that is dependent on a single zone. If you are getting that detection just coming out of the stadium and heading into the 2 final corners, you are pretty much guaranteed to get that first spot, because you have to take it, or someone else, like Nightfist, who is kind of waiting in the wings, will. Crucially though, Milan Mayer and Valentilekis, 11 laps on the soft, clearly ailing in terms of pace. When are they going to come in?
Well, for the time being, it at least looks like Milan Mayer's pace has somewhat settled down a little bit, as Arda Gunes picked up a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Milan Mayer is staying within a DRS train, not losing too much time, so I think he can stay out a little bit, go for an earlier pit stop onto the hards, and then lead the pack as the hard runners are going to go for their pit stops. Hopefully he can then stay in front long enough to go for perhaps a podium classification. I think that's what his goal is, because with the current strategy, it will be very, very hard for him to win the race if no incidents occur. Of course, if incidents occur, we have no idea what will be happening in that sense. In the meantime, the gap with Rios Progas and Simone Viola is increasing quite a bit. That shows how important DRS here is. And with Dimas now starting to knock on Sprogas' door, I think that is another fight that we should be looking at.
Yeah, with the DRS being so strong, especially in the opening sections of the track, there is so much speed that you can gain, and even Sprogus knows it, because he doesn't seem to be pushing that aggressively compared to what he once was, like running within 5% of the battery. He's now being a little bit more conservative, so keeping about 20% on tap, give or take, which is generally standard race fare. Having just enough in the reserves to fend off any critical moves, but otherwise you are using it to the fullest. I think that's the best option at this stage, because he's not making up any significant time, any meaningful time, in the position he's currently in.
Definitely not. As now Milan Mayer's finally been overtaken and drops to 5th as Cordo N'Golo picks up that position. In the meantime, we see Alexander Dimas struggling a little bit for pace, not being able to keep up with Rad Sprogas. Of course, having that DRS, making him gain about half a second on the main straight, will probably gain him or net him another 2 or 3 tenths on the second straight here. So that shows that he is staying within range because of the DRS, as Leo Lund has now dispatched Sven Schumacher, sending him back to P7. So our championship runners, almost all of them struggling a little bit. The only one that's not struggling is Lillian.
Well, so McLaren proving themselves a very strong constructor, and definitely showcasing why they are on top of the Constructors' Championship here in PSGL PCF4 right now. They got 5th and 6th, which is the best result across all of the manufacturers currently. So we got 4th and 9th for Haas, which I'd say is the closest, and then maybe 1st and 10th. But that is still a very big points gap. And then consistency-wise, now the McLaren teammates can help each other and start to coordinate a little bit. I'm curious, in terms of tyre strategy, how these teams are going to play, because how much they lean on, let's say, the mediums, is going to really dictate their race strategy. Your hards are more your mile munchers. They are the ones that you want to just get consistent running in, get drivers on, in order to get to the prime tyre that you actually want to be on in terms of pace. Of course, maximize the hards, but they're not your ideal compound. What you really want is to be on the mediums for as much useful time as possible. So when these drivers are going to come in is anyone's guess.
Well, we just see that Balinelekis has gone for his pit stop, switching from the soft to the medium compound. That was quite an interesting move there. We also saw Alexander Dimas being a lot closer to Ryan Sprogus, not expecting him to really go for the overtake, so he was not using any of his ERS, but did have to back off a little bit before turn 1, perhaps wanting to go for an overtake from turn 3 into 4, but not being able to make a move stick there. We see that the gap towards Simone Violo is now sort of settling at the 3-second mark, so that is good news for them. But it also means that the DRS advantage of about half a second definitely is quite a tall order to manage. Leo Lund has now overtaken Milan Meyer as well, so the softs really dying out now, and I think Milan will be coming in within the next 2 laps. Perhaps try the same thing as Balinelekis.
I'll do you one better.
Runners, and there he is. He's coming in.
There you go. Yeah, I think Balinelekis coming in was kind of the signal, the warning shot for Milan Meyer, knowing that they had to come in pretty much soonish, and seeing their teammate pass after coming from much further down. Let's be honest, I think that was as much evidence as Meyer need. I'm not sure what communication they've got, but it was certainly a clear sign, and now he's going to be going in for those mediums then. Ideally, I think are going to take him to the end of the race, but it might be a little early to go on those compounds, because looking at some of the tyre telemetry data, 20 laps on these mediums will put you at a pretty high threshold. It's looking like 60 to 70% predicted. Keep in mind, though, there is predicted figures, that is not confirmed. We could see drivers really pull it out the park in terms of tyre conservation.
It's definitely a very aggressive move, but it shows as Andrew Molnar picks up a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. He has now DNF'd as well, so he's decided that that was it for him today. But yeah, for Milan Meyer going for the aggressive option here, already went for the aggressive option at the start by choosing the soft tires, but I think what he really wants to do there is try to go for some pretty fast runs early on, make the pit stop about 5 to 6 laps prior to all the other drivers, and hoping that he has enough distance between him and the other drivers when they come out for the pits, so they can't get within the RS range and get the win that way. If that is the thing that is going to work for him, I am not entirely sure. He will definitely be struggling all the way at the end on his medium set of compounds. As further up ahead, it looks like Raj Sprogus is finally able to get a little bit closer to Simone Violo. Gap now being 2.9 seconds, but it's coming down to 3 at the end of the straight. So it's getting a little bit better. They're coming a little bit closer.
A little bit of a wobble, though, coming from Sprogus out of the first few corners. So he's needing to keep his wits about him if he wants to keep that P8 position. Dimas is hot and breathing down his throat. I think the real viable option here, the only viable option for the likes of Sprogus, Dimas et al, is the undercut. They cannot make it on pure pace alone. The DRS is just too powerful. So what they need to be looking for is their tyre life right now, their projected tyre wear on the medium compound, and they need to get on it as soon as possible. Even if it means an extra lap of running, maybe outside of prime time on the mediums, they just need to try the undercut. The undercut's so powerful on this game, in this sport, and they need to leverage that in their favour. As you see a bit of a battle between Simone Violo and Sven Schumacher, and Simone Violo goes wide, loses his front wing. I think that was contact there. He's going to have to go in for a wing change.
And looks like both of the drivers have come in. I'm not sure if there's also damage for Sven Schumacher. Let's go into the pits and see if Sven Schumacher had any damage, but it does not look like he has any. He can just go on with his race and switch to the medium compounds. What I think is going to be interesting and could work out for Alexander Dimas, he's deciding to stay behind Richard Sprogus. The reason why I think he's doing that is because he's waiting for Sprogus to pit. Because when Sprogus pits, he still has DRS for the main straight and the second straight from turn 3 to 4. So he can use that extra run, which gives him about 6-7 tenths of extra pace because of the DRS. And they just come in the next lap. We'll have one lap of fresher tires, fresher medium tires, and could perhaps use that tire advantage to beat Sprogus.
Nobody wants to be the lead of that queue. See Simone Viola getting a 3-second time penalty, and that's just going to be insult to injury at this stage. He's lost his front wing, and he's got 3 seconds following a collision with Sven Schumacher, who got away with no damage. That is going to be a brutal check for them. But yeah, Sprogus is probably going to have to come in soon. Dimas is probably going to come in straight after. They are eagerly watching what that Haas is doing, because you don't want to be leading the queue. And in Dimas's position, as you can see, he follows it perfectly as predicted, straight into the pits alongside Sprogus. He's going to have the battery advantage too, because look at him, 91% versus Sprogus is about 26. So of course he's going to get some charge in the pit lane. But the main thing is that he's going to be coming out strong, and he's going to be coming out with a tow.
And I think the interesting thing here is because he was within DRS range, he might have the DRS going from turn 3 to 4 as well. It's expecting him to stay out for a little bit of an extra lap. But what is also very cool to see is how much of an impact Miller Meyer's early stop has. Sven Schumacher, about 2.5 seconds to the leader, perhaps with the incidents a little bit more, was now over 5 seconds behind Miller Meyer. So that pretty much means that he will inherit the net lead as soon as the other drivers are going to come in. The other drivers, of course, making sure that they have a little bit of longer life for those medium set of compounds. As Dimas will really need to dispatch Sprogus very, very quickly before he runs into any troubles with that and pick up as many points as he possibly can.
Here you go. You can see the leaders heading into the pits. That is going to be Linhart and Lillian both heading in, 1 and 2. Those two drivers are going to be the ones to watch, and we're going to be comparing them, of course, when Nyquist, Cordoningolo, and even Santa Maria inevitably also come through. We are going to be seeing just how powerful the undercut is. I think they are really banking on late game pace as the mediums start to give away, maybe get into delamination range for some of them, like Alekis, who is really running quite close to the sun in terms of tire life. I think they're really going to be banking on that late game pace, on those last few laps where they can hold off and take positions from people who are maybe struggling to keep the grip going. But the undercut, again, so powerful in this game. I don't know how much it's going to make up for with staying out longer.
Yeah, now the big question is how much of an impact will that undercut have, because Miller Meyer has a 3.3 lead over Sixten Linhart. But Sixten Linhart and Lillian will be able to play the DRS game and just give each other a tow and propel themselves up front towards Miller Meyer. And even though it looks unlikely, because they're drivers from other teams, they're both fighting for the best possible position, I think they have to work together now in a bit to close the gap towards Miller Meyer. Of course, their tires are 4 laps fresher, but are they fresh enough to make up 3 seconds if Miller Meyer does not make any mistakes here? In the meantime, Vincent Nyquist has also come in for his stop. Gordon N'Golo has stayed out. Even Santa Maria has stayed out as well. So those drivers will be coming back at the back of the field when they make their pit stop. For now, the gaps are staying fairly even as Sven Schumacher is trying to get his car within the DRS range of Lillian.
But yeah, the pace is needed, absolutely, as Linhart and Lillian, almost in uniform and expected fashion, trade places coming through corners 1 and 2, and are going to be committing to that placement, as Ardagune is going to be third retirement of this session so far. Yeah, you bring up a really good point at the tyre age versus the pace. Lillian and Linhart's tyres are 4 laps younger than Meyer's, but that doesn't matter. The question that matters is, are they 3 to 4 seconds over a course of a race faster? That's the question they've got to answer, and the question that they're going to find out the answer to over the course of this race. Because 4 laps is not an insignificant amount, but if you cannot make up that time, the strategy is irrelevant. You've also got to consider actually passing, because it's one thing to get up into proximity, it's another thing to get around a car.
That is 100% true. And in the meantime, when we were keeping our eyes on the fight at the front, we see that Rard Sprogus is now in P10 with Alexander Dimas up in P8. So he definitely making.
And that's a
making better
big
use-
shunt. That is contact between the two. You can see that they got tied up against the wall. I'd love to have a replay function or something because I couldn't catch it, but we just saw the aftermath with Sprogus and Alekes both pinned against the wall in the final corner, just right tucked in the crest of it.
And Ivan Santamaria has to come in, so without any safety car, that means that he is going to lose quite a lot of points in his championship fight. Rard Sprogus currently at 1 point, but we're not sure if he has any damage or how much damage he has. If we go back to the front of the pack, we saw that last lap the gap was, at this stage of the track, about 2.8 seconds. It's now 2.4 seconds. So I think it's safe to say that Sixten, Linhart, and Lillian are closing the gap by about 3 to 4 tenths a second. And they will be within striking distance within DRS range in about 5 to 6 laps. So at the current pace, Milan Meyer is not going to keep that race victory, at least in grasp.
And we can see that the question of pace versus age is coming into effect. Cordon N'Golo is going to be coming into the pits, last driver finally to do so. But 22 laps on the hards, I think we're going to see the power of the undercut in full force here as they're still making their stop. They were out in the front, but interestingly, they're going on to the softs. And 13 laps on the softs is a very big gamble, don't you think?
It's a very big gamble. In the meantime, we see Rard Sprogus come in, had front wing end plate damage, so he had to come in. But that also means that his championship hopes are going to take a big dent after that incident in lap 21. Cordon N'Golo has a bit of a gap towards Simone Violo. As soon as he dispatches Simone Violo, he has to pick up the pace and find 5.5 seconds to go toward the back of Sven Schumacher, because he just got overtaken by Vincent Nyquist. If he manages to close down that gap, I think he has a really good chance to get within perhaps the 4th position or even within podium position. So his strategy could definitely work out later on the end of the race. But so far, I think our drivers that have the best chance are Lillian and Sixten Linhart. And I think the big winner of strategy so far is Alexander Dimas. Remember, they started at the back of the field and are now P4.
A little bit of an abrupt cut there. You cut out, it sounded like, for a second there. My apologies. But we're keeping an eye just on the top of the field because it looks so tight in terms of contention. We're seeing almost a pendulum movement between Linhart and Lillian as they consistently trade places over the start of the lap. Milan Meyer has kind of got his own space. I think, crucially, they've got the pace and they're leapfrogging each other in a way that is actually moving them forward. Usually, I would dissuade against drivers fighting when they've got a driver who is multiple seconds ahead. But in Linhart and Lillian's case, them two fighting and those two pushing is actually pushing each other forward. So you can see that 3-second gap, and we're only on lap 24, has already completely diminished as Cordon N'Golo is a very aggressive driver on those softs. You saw that massive outward swing before coming back in, did it cleanly, but yeah, wow, showing the pace of those fresh softs right out the gate and looking to get the most out of them from day one.
Yeah, he's one of the drivers that could go for the fastest lap area. I think Sven Schumacher made a little bit of a mistake because only last lap he got overtaken by Vincent Nyquist, and that gap that Cordon N'Golo has towards him is 4.7 seconds, so definitely must have made a mistake there, as he's now down to P8, and very soon will be under pressure of Simone Violo. Simone Violo, of course, does have that penalty, so should not mean too much for Sven's end result, but of course with a 8th position, being one of the championship contenders is not going to make life easier for him. In the meantime, Sixten Linhart is going with the overtake onto Milan Meyer. Lillian is going to do the same thing. So it looks like Milan Meyer has now lost his advantage as Leo Lund has now passed Alexander Dimas. And Vincent Nyquist has also gone with the overtake onto Dimas. So Dimas will have to look in his mirrors for the time being. Also has to watch out for Cordon N'Golo because he has gotten about a second a lap quicker in the previous running. Could mean in a few laps' time he will be on Dimas' team.
Yeah, but again, we bring up that question of tire age versus pace. Is he going to be able to make up 4.2 seconds without DRS in the time that those softs are still in their prime? I worry that they might be able to make it up, and they are showing the signs of that pace as the tents come down, but by the time they catch up, those softs might already be out of their ideal operating window, so actually getting the move done on Dimas or even Nyquist by that stage, as Dimas looks to be biding their time to make more moves in a few laps' time, that's really where the crux of this race is at. It's about planning your moves several laps in advance and committing to them, knowing that they're going to succeed through strategizing and management of life. That is what it's all about here at Mexico. It's one of attrition and one of strategy, rather than one of outright pace, because technically, short for Sector 2, it is not that complex as a track.
It definitely is not. We see Lillian and Six and Lynn are again trading places, but I think doing this is working out really well. We'd expected the drivers to go for a lot of DRS chicken, not overtaking and then going for the move on the final lap. Of course, these drivers will still want to be in second going into the final lap. But because they're playing this strategy, what they're doing is they now have Milan Meyer outside of DRS, Vincent Nyquist about 3 seconds behind them in total. If they're going to be playing the DRS game, there is no way Vincent Nyquist is going to get within their DRS range. And that means that the Demo 2 can fight it out for the race win here. In the meantime, Porto Ngolo has picked up almost another second trying to get closer to Dimas. So if his tires last all the way to the end, Dimas could be under pressure from him. I worry about keeping that 6th position.
Yeah, that 6th position is really what matters to Dimas right now, as he's going to be the one that kind of controls not just this race from the mid-pack, but also everyone behind him, because if he loses pace, he's going to give a vital opportunity for the likes of Cordon and Golo, and I guess by proxy Sven Schumacher, depending on how much time he loses, to get DRS, to make movements upward. And that is not even accounting for the likes of Simone Viola, who is already charging up, making more moves, and seems like they're on an absolute mission to gain time.
Yeah, a lot of our championship contenders are really struggling for pace here. So I think it's good that we name all of our 6 championship contenders and let you guys know in what position they are with 9 laps remaining. We'll start at the top. Our championship leader, Lillian, is currently in 2nd place. Milan Meyer, other championship contender, is in P3, doing quite well so far, but now will be under pressure from Nyquist, Leolund, and Alexander Dimas, another of our championship contenders. Then we have Sven Schumacher, P9, Ivan Santa Maria, P10, and Bart Sprogus in P13. I don't think any looks on a podium position unless incidents occur. But for now, the main fight seems to be between Lillian and Sixten Linhart, as we're now going to look what Vincent Nyquist can do as he's looking to overtake Milan Meyer.
Kokeni Tomas is going to be the 3rd driver to get a track limits warning, who is currently out on circuit. So that is really going to be insult to injury, given they already served a quali ban. Of the 3 drivers that served a quali ban, I think that the only one that is meaningfully recovered is Dimas. He's up in P6 right now and is within striking distance of even making some moves further. So I am eagerly keeping an eye on them, at least for the time being. And big lunge from Leo Lund on Milan Meyer, on their teammate there. They're really just trying to push and get that movement upward. I wonder if there's some frustration creeping in from their quali incident. As you can see, they've completely burned all their resources and they're just on a mad charge right now, it feels like.
Yeah, I think what Leolund wants to do here is keep his own hopes alive and therefore leapfrogging his teammate, because he wants to stay within DRS range of Vincent Nyquist and is using all of the deployment in order to get close enough to that. But because he does that, it means he puts Milan Meyer under pressure of Alexander Dimas, and them two are fighting for the championship. So in a team sense, perhaps not the greatest idea. For his own benefit, definitely one of the better ideas. And we have a yellow flag. That's Simone Violo, who is out of the race. And we have a virtual safety car. So this could be a moment for some of our drivers to go for a pit stop. But I don't think any of our drivers should be wanting to go for one, because they are going to lose track position here.
Yeah, track position is what's absolutely crucial, especially now that we are in the final few laps of the race. No one is going to trade in lap track position for a fresh set of tyres unless you're at the bottom of the field where you have nothing to lose. And even then, it's a VSC, not a full SC, so you're still going to feel every second of that time loss. You cannot make it back by rejoining a queue. So everyone is just going to be staying out. They're going to be remaining committed to their strategy and their choice, with the exception of Tomas and Kalman, who are coming in assumedly for damage.
Well, it could be for damage, but with the fresher tires that they will have. Oh, Sixon Linhart has picked up a drive-through penalty for speeding under the virtual safety car. That is going to absolutely ruin his race, and what a shame. Our reserve driver has been driving so well, getting very close to a race win before in Imola, was already pipped to it and just finishing in second. But now with that drive-through penalty, will likely fall all the way back to P9. Oh, that's terrible.
I wonder if they're going to appeal it, because it looks like it was right at the end of the VSC period. So maybe they sped up knowing that the VSC was about to end and then mistakenly just clipped like the edge of the measurement point and hit the delta. Big jumbles around the field though, as you can see. Trades for Leo Lund and Vincent Nyquist, Dimas and Milan Meyer. They're all making positional trades, but they have all got a case where one of them only has the DRS. Lund has it, Nyquist hasn't. Dimas has it, Meyer hasn't. And everyone is just trying to get back within that second of these drivers from positions 1 to 6. It's really looking fragmented right now, and this Noah's Ark approach, 2x2x2, is going to bite them back in these last few laps if they do not get a move on.
Yeah, at this point, Alexander Dimas and Milan Meyer will have to work together if they want to try and close that gap to the drivers up in front, which are Vincent Nyquist and Leo Lund. Leo Lund and Vincent Nyquist then in turn will likely be doing the same to try and close that gap towards Lillian and Sixon Linhart. Sixon Linhart is now very close to Lillian and will likely go for yet another overtake on the main straight. We see the lead change almost every lap now between the two drivers. And of course, what you want so far is to be in second going into that final lap and go for the overtake and take the win that way. In the meantime, Cordon N'Golo has gone up to 1.9 seconds from Milan Meyer. So I think towards the end of the race, he might be getting going for an overtake onto him. And he might even trend that 5th place that currently Alexander Dimas is holding.
But at the same time, you look at the times fluctuate as we go through the DRS zones. What was 1.8 has now become anywhere from 2.1 to 2.3, and that's going to grow. So it's not as simple as the softs are making up time. It's that the softs are making up time, but it's being negated by the massive effect that the DRS has. I don't think that Cordon N'Golo is going to be able to make a real challenge against the likes of Meyer, especially given that they have their own DRS and leapfrog in the form of Dimas.
That is not going to make it easier for them, although both of them have tires that are slowly reaching the end of their life. Cordon N'Golo being on 8 lap old softs, Milan Meyer being on 15 lap old mediums. Still have 5 laps to go for. In the meantime, we see that Leo Lund and Vincent Nyquist have closed the DRS distance towards the 2 leaders, so they are mixing themselves up for that race-winning battle, although they are running quite low on DRS. Leo Lund on 14%. Sixon Linhart is going to go in for his penalty, so that does mean that he thinks that it is, a valid penalty, and thus will be falling back and likely not appealing it. And that means that the main fight now is going to be between Lillian, Leo Lund and Vincent Nyquist, but Vincent Nyquist, 19% ERS. Leo Lund, 8%. Lillian, 95%. So he's been saved.
Yeah, Lillian has really done a good job when it comes to resource conservation and economy. That is their one major strength that I've seen come to save them race in, race out. Whether it was race 1 at Interlagos or now, start to end of season, that's one thing they've nailed. Alongside quali pace, it has been that conservation. Of tyres, I couldn't tell you. Unfortunately, I don't have the data for the medium right now relative to them. But I do know that on ERS front, they are prepared for anything. And they do a really good job of economizing that battery alongside putting down some good pace, lap in, lap out. It is a shame with, with the Sixon Linhart whole scenario, but I imagine it's also quite hard to contest / appeal. It's the same thing with speeding in the pit lane. Your game may say 50 miles an hour or 80 kilometers per hour, but if internally it's 80.6, let's say, if you're right on the cusp and it is technically over, you can't contest that, because the question is, have you got evidence that contradicts the verdict? And being right on the cusp, right on the edge, is not going to satisfy that level of proof. So I always see it come up in stewards' reports. It's like, hey, I was at 50 kilometers. Hey, I was at 60 kilometers. Even though I was at the limit, the game penalized me. It's like, you haven't got evidence to say that you were under the limit, so the penalty stands. It's one of those scenarios, I think. And
to go with a very, very famous quote, computer says no.
Computer says no, but there we go. That's another VSC on the board, as that's going to be Noel Coleman. Is that going to be VSC or full SC? Because their car was in the middle of the track. And we do see a yellow vehicle currently on the mini-map.
Well, we have... Are we going...
It's a full...
We have a full safety car.
It's a full course safety car. Are they going to go in? That's the question. Are they going to go in now?
Oh, this will be a tricky one. I think if there's any other drivers that should go for this risk here, I think Milan Meyer and Cordon N'Golo could go for it. Cordon N'Golo has an 8-second gap towards Ivan Santa Maria, so won't hurt him too much. Milan Meyer's tires are really, really done for, so he can only lose positions here. Riot's Progress has already gone in together with Avalin Alekis, but who else is going to come in? They're all going to come in. It is Lilian, Leo Lund, Milan Meyer, Alexander Dimas, Cordon N'Golo, Vincent Nyquist is staying out. But yeah, as a race leader, it's very hard to take the decision here to go in for the pits. The drivers behind also coming in now into the pits. I think pretty much everyone's going to win except for Vincent Nyquist. And oh boy, he is not going to like this.
Mind you, look at Dimas though. He leapfrogged two drivers, Maya and Colin in the pit lane. So he's coming out P4. And I'm going to be realistic here. Nyquist is done for. Nyquist is not in a good situation because they're on 13 lap old mediums. I think as soon as they saw Lillian go in, they should have committed, because now they're going to catch up. Even with the limited time to catch up to the queue, they're going to have enough time. They're going to get the heat into those softs, and Lillian, Lund, Dimas, Cordon N'Golo, etc. are all going to be taking that fight up. So Dimas could be on board for a podium, and if they play their cards right, that could be something maybe more.
Yeah, this is definitely working out a lot for Alexander Dimas. Also, another driver who's working out for is Sixten Linhart. He has been able to make yet another stop, and he will be, even though he's in P9, at the back of the pack, but the safety car has to come in within this lap because we need to have a couple full laps of racing. And with that, it also means, let's see, we start lap 35, 36. We won't have DRS at the end of the race, so drivers will have to take their overtaking moves on their own. As we said, Vincent Nyquist is going to be in a lot of trouble. 13 lap old mediums. We see Cordon N'Golo. I'm not sure if they make contact with Alexander Dimas there. They're now going to go back on his way, but yeah, Vincent Nyquist couldn't do much about that. As a race leader, you don't want to go in. And with all the other drivers coming in, you realize that you are in trouble there. There's nothing you can do about that. Lillian's already gone with the overtake, and I can only imagine many more are yet to fall.
You can see it's two, nearly three abreast as we come through turn one here. You got that McLaren, Leo Lund just fighting and giving it absolutely everything to make a corner committed. That's Lillian on their side. That's Lillian making big slides as they get tipped on the rear. Contact all around. Nyquist down in P7, Lund down in P9. So he just didn't have the opportunity in the space. And Cordon N'Golo is going to be the one to inherit the lead. So now it's going to be a mad dash for everyone involved here in order to catch up. But Cordon N'Golo's got 2.5 seconds on this field.
Yeah, he's gone. I'm not entirely sure who initiated that contact there, but we're definitely going to see some steward reports out of that, and I'm pretty sure the last has not been said about that yet. As in the meantime, we see that Sven Schumacher is now closing the gap onto Lillian. Remember, he was dropping back quite significantly, was made up quite some positions, while even Santa Maria, another of our championship competitors, is now in P4, made up a lot of places. Sixten Linhart, currently P7, still on his way to make up some positions, but with Vincent Nyquist being down almost 3 seconds from the main five, I don't think there is too much that they can do about that. Lillian trying to defend in the meantime. Front Sven Schumacher has used almost all of his ERS systems. Sven Schumacher has used all of his systems. and I don't think we'll be going for an overtaking move. Although we see even Santa Maria overtaking Alexander Dimas, so they will want to go for fourth. So our championship contenders currently P2, P3, P4, P5, P7, and then finally Rarsprogus, P11. But a lot of our drivers are staying close. Not so many gaps are going to be made within the championship standings if the results stay as is. Oh boy, we're going to have some crazy final 2 races.
Yeah, and you can see that hustling is going down even the bottom of the field as Milan Maia is completely missing a front wing. I believe Leo Lund has got end plate damage. Actually, no, he's fine. But it's still going to be running out of room in terms of their fight with Nyquist down in P8 and P9. I do feel bad for Lilian here. They did manage to recover, but they're fighting with Sven Schumacher. They had it in the bag, and I think that they got ran out of room effectively in order to get the position. They had to take some risks down further in the field, and that is not going to be viable. Stewards are going to look at it, but for now, Cordon N'Golo on track is your winner on the books. And you can see a photo finish between Lilian and Sven Schumacher. It's going to be Sven Schumacher that takes it. It's going to be Cordon N'Golo, Sven Schumacher, Lilian, Ivan Santamaria, Alexander Dimas, Sixten Linhart with a great recovery, and then the 2 McLarens, Milan Maia, Leo Lund, Nyquist, Kokeni Tamas, Rad Spurgis, and then Balint Alekis. So again, 12 finishers.
Yeah, we had quite some incidents, so 5 drivers not making the end of the race. I think our big winner here is Cordon N'Golo. Got a little bit fortunate with the incident there, but yeah, Lilian seemingly got pushed by a couple drivers there, so I think he won't be all the way too happy about it. But yeah, we went pretty much 4 wide going into turn 1. That was a crazy, crazy safety car restart. Alexander Dimas picking up the game driver of the day as he has made up an enormous amount of position starting all the way from the back of the field. Yeah, we are going to see some Stewart reports again. Thankfully, not as much carnage as we saw the last 2 races with only this notable incident that we had, although there were some accidents that caused some crashes early on, but really noteworthy accidents that we were able to catch was, of course, the safety car restart. But what a great win for Cordon N'Golo. They haven't been able to pick up all too many points throughout the championship, and now a race win straight away. That's great.
Yeah, they've certainly made the best out of the situation. Of course, we will hear from the stewards in regards to this incident, who gets penalised, if anyone gets any penalties, maybe even removed, as I don't know whether anyone got unfair penalties for being forced off track at any point. But as it stands, your provisional standings here, pre-penalties by stewards, pre-investigation, is going to be Cordon N'Golo in the top spot, Sven Schumacher in P2, Lilian in P3 with Ivan Santamaria, Alexander Dimas, Sixten Linhart, Milan Maia, Leo Lund, Vincent Nyquist, Kokeni Tamas, Ryan Spogis, and Balint Lekas completing your 12 finishers. And then your non-finishers, we had Noel Carman with an incident on the last corner, bringing out the full SC. We had Simone Violo also having an incident, I believe, at the bottom of the track. Ardagune, Andre Molnar, and Silly Side Guy all ended up retiring in the pit lane. But regardless, with these drivers, it is always a case of attrition. It is always a case of pushing. And in their cases, it's about just making it to the end, it seems like. We're going to see if we can chat to any of the racers, but I'd understand if tensions are high, because reportedly, that final lap, it was 4 wide. And that would explain a lot about why Lilian kind of ended up sideways and a few wings were strewn across the track.
Well, if there's one driver who I definitely would expect to see in the commentator box in a moment, would be Cordon N'Golo. He's so far picked up 3 points in the season with a DNF in round 2, a DNF in round 3, a P8 in round 4 Qatar, the only points that he managed to score, then a DNF in round 8, a disqualification in round 9, and now the second race where he manages to get the finish, reach the finish line, he picks up a win. So great results for him. He is going to make up a massive jump in the standings, going from 25th to, well, almost towards the top 10, probably spot 12 or 13. And yeah, at the top, most of the championship competitors are actually placing quite close. So Lilian gonna lose a couple of points to Sven Schumacher, so he is going to gain 2 points on him. Schumacher was 6 points behind, will now be 4 points behind, and the other drivers losing a couple of points. But we will see quite a few drivers still be within about 10 to 12 points. The only driver now really going to fall out of contention is Rahard Sprogus, so he will see this race at Mexico as a race to forget. In the meantime, we find Sven Schumacher in the waiting room, so I think we have a driver that we can interview.
Yeah, we can have a quick chat with him as one of our top 3 spots and one of our top 3 drivers with, let's say, a photo finish. And we'll have a little bit of a talk. You can hear me stammering my words just because I'm trying to process, as with Saudi Arabia, just try and process what even happened. It seems like these races are getting more and more unpredictable, but either way, we're going to be jumping in and we're going to have Sven Schumacher in the commentary box. First off, welcome and congratulations on your performance today, and also the photo finish with Lillian. So I think it's 10 milliseconds, good job. But either way, how do you feel your race went today, mate?
I was so unlucky, and I was so lucky at the end. I need to clarify that a bit. My Google Drive opened while I was racing, so my game stopped and I lost 10 seconds mid-race, so that's why I fell back. And at the end, people made it 4 or 5, why I don't know whose fault it was, I need to watch it back. But a complete new gate opened for me, and I just straight went into P3 and then had a very good battle with Lilian. We drove clean, I think, hard but fair. And yeah, it was amazing having that battle, and the photo finish just P2 with 10,000ths of a second. So I feel relieved, great, disappointed, everything at the same time.
I'm sure it's like a roller coaster of emotions. I think that's an understatement. I mean, what was your perspective? Because you mentioned that sort of 4 or 5 wide incident and how it opened a gate for you. What happened from your perspective? Like, what options did that give you in that moment?
Right, so when I pucked, I needed to catch the safety car. So that was quite an issue because they already went like 3 or 4 seconds ahead of me. So they were at the end of the straight while I was still 500-600 meters back. So I couldn't really watch who was where and what happened. But when I came out of turn 3, I just saw everyone in a wall, sideways, backwards, or whatever they were doing. And I just could go side by side with Lilian, I think, already. And then just stay behind him. I thought he had damage, but I think everyone had. It was just, yeah. For me, it was lucky. For the rest, it was unfair and unlucky.
Yeah, I think it's a lucky break, I guess, but still, that doesn't diminish your performance. And looking at your performance in, I'd say, the last couple of rounds, you've really pulled it out the bag in terms of like both on track, on quali, and also even with like some unlucky penalties. Like I think last round you got a penalty removed and you jumped up to the podium spot. You're putting in those consistent runs. So with that in mind, like how are you feeling in terms of your championship position as we come towards the end of the season? Of course, 2 races to go as a current unannounced.
Yeah, I don't know what tracks it is gonna be, but yeah, we will see. I kind of see a pattern going where I get a podium like P3, then the next race get a podium P2, and then the next race get a podium P1, and last race P3, this race P2. So maybe next race P1, but we will see.
I
really can't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, so far, if we look at the standings, of course, coming into this race, you were 6 points behind Lillian. Of course, the results are still tentative, but if the results stay as is, you're going to close that gap to 4 points towards Lillian. So that's going to put you really up close into championship contention. I think moving or jumping from 5th in the standings to 2nd in the standings. But I want to go all the way back to qualifying today. I believe you qualified in P5. Were you happy with your performance there?
Yes and no. Today I felt like I had no real pace. So my PB was only 15.15, and then putting the lap in, my bank lap was not that good. Then coming down to my second lap, I lost like 2/10 in the first and middle sector. So for the last lap, I knew I had something to gain. So I was up 1.3 tenths, and I lost 1/10 in the second sector as well. But I think, yeah, considering my PB was a 1.5 and I did a 1.66, I really can't complain about that.
All right, and then throughout the race, you seem to be, at least on the second runnings after the first pit stop, you seem to be struggling a little bit for pace, starting to drop back a little bit until, of course, that safety car came that completely changed the output for you. How did the first and second stint go for you?
I would say the first stint went fairly decent. I could just stay behind the other guys, but yeah, Leo decided to he wanted to have a nice battle, but I didn't want to, so I didn't want to lose the position either. But yeah, that's where I lost loads of ERS and loads of time compared to the cars ahead of me. But all in all, it was, yeah, a decent race pace, but again, with no ERS on this track with such long straight, I really can't do anything.
All right, and then, yeah, coming out, of course, having a great battle with Lillian. You already referred to it earlier on. You mentioned that it was some very clean racing. We saw you guys being very, very close to each other, but there was no contact at all in that final lap, was there?
Apart from a little paint switching, it was all fair and hard, but I like it that way. Also, Lillian is an amazing driver. Seeing his qualifying performance, is going to be hard to beat him in the championship. So I need loads of luck, loads of hard work coming into the next 2 rounds. But we will see. Either way, he's a great guy, so I really enjoyed the battle.
Awesome stuff, mate. Well, regardless of how stewarding turns out, I would say that particularly in that last fight with Lillian coming up to the line, you held your head high, you did the best that you could out of the situation, and in the end, you are, at least as far as on the books for now goes, going to be walking away with a podium spot. So, good job. Of course, next race is still a little bit of a mystery, but we can expect that it's going to be some fun, and I hopefully it's a good pick. What track are you hoping for? If there's any tracks you're sort of eyeing up, oogling to be in those last 2 spots, what tracks are you personally angling for?
Sandford.
Oh,
Mostly
yes.
my home track. Yeah, everything except China would be great, because China is like not my track.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, Zandvoort and Portimao are like my 2 favorites, so you've hit a chord with me. You've struck a chord with me. Like, you know my heartstrings at this point, so either way, it's been a tough race, and I'm sure stewarding's going to have a pretty busy night, so we're going to let you go, mate. Again, amazing job. Looking forward to seeing you next round.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
And that, folks, that was Sven Schumacher, and that is our race. So as we said before, we have our final sort of standings. So remember, these are the standings from round 9, and this is where we leave ourselves today, with a few big upsets. So Stewards Inquiries is already in the process of lighting up with new threads, so we are definitely going to be seeing that. And of course, as we do in rounds past, we will be updating you pre-race on what goes on. We'll make sure that you're up to date with the latest in the standings, the latest in the on-track action, and the latest when it comes to the Premier Gaming League's PCF4 division. So with all that being said, thank you to GT Omega for being our primary partner. Use code PSGL at checkout for a healthy discount. Thank you to all the drivers and all the staff team that make this possible. And of course, thank you to Myth, who is my co-com/partner in crime on this whole journey. What track are you hoping for next round? We got to lock in one. I know we speculated before, and we talk about it a couple times in terms of the tracks we're hoping to see, but you got to make a commitment now. What track do you think is going to be next time?
Well, I think if we look at the calendar so far, we haven't had all that many races in Europe. We've actually only had 4 races, even though the track is pretty much dominated by European tracks. I think we've already mentioned there has to be a track in the US, so Coda we definitely have to see. And then another track in Europe, well, which one do you want to pick? I think Zandvoort could be an easy pick there.
You got to commit to one, though.
Like that as well. But if I want to commit to one, it's got to be Coda. We will have to see that.
Coda? All right, I'm gonna go on the Eurocentric side of things, and I'm going to say Zandvoort and then a Coda end. That is my prediction. Hold me to it if you're still in the chat by this point. And also, you Myth, you got to hold me to this one, because this is my final prediction / lock-in. Zandvoort with a Kota finish. But either way, enough speculation, folks. We are going to be rounding things out here. Thank you so much for joining us. And, of course, stay tuned as we come to the end and the epic conclusion of PCF4 here in PSGL. So take care, and we will see you next time.
Desperately trying to hang on. He's got the inside. Ortmir is through on the left-hand side. Pumps the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Ortmir now to the last couple of corners now. His finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium. Once again, the ghost is back. Jarno Ortmir wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix.
Cocaine in my nose, they got rose